Hi teacher and partners, I'm Yolima Escobar and today I want to share with you my reflection about the importance of assessment on teaching and learning. I want to share with you this definition of assessment that I found and I consider is clear and useful. Assessment is considered as an integral part of process education and the key to improving performance. At the beginning of this module, I focus my assessment only to obtain a grade, just measure students' learning or meet the school requirement. But now I have a clear definition that assessment has a big and important influence on my students' learning and act as a motivation for study and for continued learning. I want to share with you this comic that I found and I consider it useful to understand what is the main purpose of our assessment in our teaching practice. It's very useful and important that we focus on our students' needs and abilities. It's normal that we find a lot of differences in our classroom. And our assessment should be pay attention to those differences and abilities and understand what our students know, what our students can do, and interpret the results of those assessments and apply these results to help our students to improve on those abilities. Those ideas are according to Webb 2002. I understand that it's very difficult to plan or use assessment to overcome those differences, but it's very important to be aware of the differences of our students and to try to plan assessment that cover those differences. On the other hand, I want to share with you this comic that I consider is useful to understand what is the main purpose of our teaching practice. Teaching is not only to transmit or to teach topics or knowledge to our students. The most important is to understand what our students learn during the lesson. So I consider that assessment is a good and useful tool to prove our students' learning and to understand what our students know and what our students need to know. At the moment to plan and use assessment inside the classroom, it is important to take into consideration some aspects that are useful to have a good assessment. It is important to plan assessment appropriate to the context, the student's level, the subject, and the institution. It's important to be aware of that we have to plan our assessment not only to focus on our group, but only to focus on the context and the aspect that affect our group. Also, it is useful to provide appropriate feedback to students. In this way, they can be aware of their weaknesses and their strengths. It's useful to use a variety of assessment to gather evidence of students' learning and help students to improve. So, assessment is a useful tool to obtain information about our students' learning and to help them to improve in their learning process. And finally, it's very important to involve our students in the assessment process. It's very important that they understand what are the results and what are their needs and abilities and how they can improve on those results. As a result of those ideas, I want to share with you my action plan that I consider is very basic and very useful to follow from now in my classes. The first step that I'm going to take into account is assess my students according to their needs, abilities, and their learning profiles. I'm going to assess my students not only focus on the topic or on the exam or on the content of the lesson, but also on their needs and abilities. Then I'm going to analyze those assessments, then I'm going to analyze those results. According to those results, I'm going to be aware of what my students need to know and what my students know and what they need to know during the classes. And finally, I'm going to follow an action plan that can be useful to plan my classes, so to adapt my curriculum, my material, my activities, and my syllabus to according to the assessment that I apply. So from now my classes are focused on my students' needs and abilities. On the other hand, I consider that to analyze those results collecting from the assessment, I'm going to use a rubric that can be useful to take into consideration some important aspects from the assessment, such as what my students learn about during the lesson and what are my students need to know from the following lessons, and what are my students' abilities to focus my classes. Thanks for your attention, and I hope that you enjoyed this video and I received your comments. Bye bye. Thanks for your attention.